All right, we're chapter 1, verse 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to take several verses here. And we're studying the book of Daniel, trying to take it verse to verse basis, which takes a little longer, but until Jesus comes, I don't know anything else that's more important than the Word of God. Right. So we're just going to be studying it that way. Here's the way it reads. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning in knowledge, understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among them were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belshazzar, and to Hananiah, Shadrach, and to Mishael, the Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. All right. First thing that we notice when we read this is that these are just not ordinary young men that have been brought into the kingdom. So, certain of the children of Israel, that's true, but it specifically says they're of the king's seed and of the princes. These 4 men that we're talking about in this book, these are from nobility. They were in some way associated with the nobility of Judah. In fact, the matter is, Josephus, he says in his writings that these 4 were descendants of Zedekiah, which was Josiah's youngest son, and which was the last king of Judah. Now, he's the one that Nebuchadnezzar killed all of his sons while he watched, and then put his eyes out, and then carried him to Babylon, Zedekiah. And Josephus says that he was one of the they were in some way related to Zedekiah. In fact, he indicated that they were in some way part of his family. Well, here's the way he says it. Now among these, there were 4 of the family of Zedekiah, of most excellent disposition, one of whom was called Daniel, another was called Hananiah, another Mishael, and the 4th Azariah. And the king of Babylon changed their names and demanded that they should make use of other names. That's found in there. There's a kind of I'd like to kind of read something else that's that Josephus said, but I hadn't got it on the board, so I got to, and it come to mind, which I think is kind of interesting the way he describes it. And here's the way this is found in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 10, book 10, chapter 10, and the very first part of it. And he's describing these young men. I won't read all of it, but it talks about some of the noble of the Jews that were children, that were kinsmen of Zedekiah, which I kind of just read. But here's what he says about it. Such as were remarkable for the beauty of their bodies So he said, these children were not just, these were special, such as were remarkable for the beauty of their bodies and the comeliness of their countenance. I mean, I'm sure if we'd have been there, we'd have, in part of the kingdom of Judah, I'm sure we would have been like chosen on those conditions, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not, but I thought it really interesting. See, these were good-looking kids. These were really special kids. He took the cream of the crop when he chose these kids. But here's the problem with Josephus for his observation that they were of the family of Zedekiah, indicating that maybe they in some way was. When Zedekiah was 21 years old when in 598 BC when he came to power. He was 21 years old. Well, Daniel had already been in Babylon for 7 years at that time, so that if you take 7 from 21, then that would make Zedekiah only 14 years old, so he's not really a direct son of Zedekiah. None of these are, because Zedekiah would have been too young. But they were probably related in some extended way, to Zedekiah based on what Josephus said. So these people had royal blood. These young men had royal blood flowing in their veins. According to Josephus, too, Daniel and his friends were made eunuchs in Babylon. Now, the word for eunuch is the word saris, and it means to castrate. And that was a practice among the rulers in those days. And you have to realize that these 4 young men were brought into this kingdom, and that's what happened to them. And in all probability, we don't have a direct account, but that's probably what happened to them, since they were. One of the requirements was that they be able to stand in the king's palace. That meant that they were to have be able to move around the palace and operate in there, and of course that would have made them exposed to the concubines and the wives and the daughters of the king. And no, they just didn't want any hanky-panky going on. And that was true of all. But here's another interesting thing. I'm persuaded that God never does anything without telling you ahead of time. That things just don't happen without God giving you an indication that they're going to happen. We have in Isaiah foretold that the offspring of Hezekiah would serve as eunuchs in Babylon. Now, this is 81 years or more before Jerusalem ever fell. God gives a measure. Remember, I told you once before that 150 years ago, before Cyrus ever took the throne, that God called out his name, Cyrus, as his servant, and said that what would happen. 100 years plus before Josiah was ever made king, God called his name in the Word of God. So, I mean, this is what he said, and this is the scripture that he said, "And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon." How many of you understand that in the Hebrew there's no word for grandfather? There's no word for great-grandsons. In Hebrew, if you're in line, you're referred to as sons. People talk about, that rapture is not found in the Bible, and You can always say, hey, look at that. Father's, grandfather's not in there. I mean, you can say there's a lot of things that are not in the Bible. That don't mean a whole lot. But that's what he's saying here, that Hezekiah's sons, or who he shall beget, that should come from his loins, that they would end up being eunuchs. And none of the children of Hezekiah directly ended up going to Babylon. It was descendants of him through his line that ended up there. So that's what the prophecy is about. He was taking them over there to, and this is always a question. Now these 4 sons, there's a little bit difference in opinions as far as when Daniel and these other children were taken into Babylon. Most believe it was in 605 BC at the very first siege of Jerusalem, which that's kind of the conventional thought. But there are some that thinks it maybe was the second siege that they were taking. But I think most everyone kind of agrees that it's 605. And you kind of ask the question, well, what does he need with some kids? I mean, why does a king that has this vast empire, what does he need kids for? And he's taking the best, and he's going to train them because he's going to use them to administer the territory that he's just taken. In some way, they're going, and also to help understand the culture of the people that he's conquered. That's pretty good thinking there by the king. Is so we get to that. Not only can we teach them our ways that they can help administer the territory from the perspective of the Babylonians, but we can learn about their customs so we can better deal with this people. So that's one of the reasons that did it. Children in whom there was no blemish, it tells us. Now here's the thing. It says children. Yeled. Children. And it may shock you a little bit, but this is according to Jameson, Fawcett, Jameson, Brown commentary. The word means someone between 12 and 14 years old. So these are kids. These are just young men that have been taken into a strange country to learn strange ways. And such as had the ability to stand in the king's court. This is the best that Judah had. And they were selected so that they could serve in the Babylonian kingdom and serve to the pleasure of the king. And in order to do that, they had to learn the language, the culture, the tradition, and the religion. We were talking last week about the Ishtar, the queen of love and war. Remember last week we were talking about. I was reading just the other day that they have found and I hope I pronounce it right, a cuneiform, kind of a clay or tablet or a clay object that had writing on it and all of this that was over 4,000 years old. And on that cuneiform, it talked about, it even went so far as to mention that Allah was also associated with an Ishtar, the goddess of the moon god, and also he was known as Aku in that time. So we have there's a record of, according to this article, there's a record of Allah, the one that Islam worships, there's a record of him being known back to 4,000 years ago as the moon god. You know, I thought, now that's quite interesting and associated with Ishtar. We showed the gates a little bit last week, so I thought that was kind of neat that we have a record that when they say that Allah, and this is what they say that Allah is in the Hebrew Bible as Allah, which means a God. When they say that it's the same as Jehovah or Yahweh, when they say that, I mean, you got this cuneiform over here that says it's not. It says that it's associated with Babylonian culture. Now, these boys had to go in there and they had to learn the language, the culture, the traditions, and the religion. And believe me, if you read about the Babylonian Empire, there was a lot of gods, you know. Well, they had a lot to learn. And we talked about in this religious system, the king, he acted out the part of Marduk, the chief god at that time. But in Babylon, so they had to know about all of these guys, of whom that they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So they had to learn not only the literature, but the language, and the common language of the masses was Aramaic. In fact, the matter is, in chapter 2, where it starts with where the word Cyrillic is found. In chapter 2, I don't remember what verse, but when that word Cyrillic comes up in chapter 2, from then on to the end of chapter 7, it's written in Aramaic. Not in Hebrew, but in Aramaic. So you find that all the way to the end of chapter 7. For whatever reason, Daniel wrote it in Aramaic, not Hebrew. But anyway, now there was a priestly language, a religious language, that was known as the Akkadian language. They had to learn that too. I guess it's good that the young people, like 12, 14 years old, are going to have to go to college. In a minute, we'll see that they got a 3-year college to go to. And they got to learn these languages of the culture and the gods and all of the things so that they can deal with, I guess it's good that they were really young people, because young people can just learn stuff real fast. If you want to teach a language get a little kid.
That's right.
And they'll have it going in just a little while. I believe it was a missionary one time talking about his kids. He had to go be a missionary somewhere, but anyway, he was talking about his little kids. They were playing with the other kids after they got there. It wasn't long, they had the language. I mean, they were just talking up a storm, and they were still trying to learn the language. Little kids could do it. So it's a good thing, I guess, that these were very young people. But anyway, Akkadian was kind of like Latin in Europe for the religious language of the language of the Vulgate thing. But Daniel, like Moses, had to be educated and was educated in the language and the science and of the land he was taken into. Here's an interesting thing. We think of the Chaldees as just having one meaning a territory. But that's not necessarily true. One of the meaning is that it's referring to the lower area of Mesopotamia, but the second meaning has to do with wise men. In fact, the matter is, the wise men that came to Bethlehem, came to Judea, looking for the Messiah. I gotta figure out how to turn it off.
That's right.
These were probably wise men, and by wise men, I mean this was people. What we don't realize, and I'll stop on this slide here. But what we don't realize is that a lot of the science that we enjoy today had its beginning in either Egypt or Babylon. And just thinking about Babylon, we have Babylon to thank for mathematics. We have it to metallurgy. We have it to thank for anatomy. We have it to thank for astronomy. The exact measurements of the lunar and the solar cycles all come from Babylon. Tracing of the paths of the planets, that all was developed. The division of the circle into 360 degrees. You know. Things we use today had their origin. In fact, I read some time ago, it's been a good while back, that at one time the biggest library in the world was situated in Babylon. You know. And of course, now it was destroyed because for some reason people, and it was just like right now, I read the other day where a church 1,500 years ago, 1,500 years old, was destroyed, bulldozed by ISIS over there. Over there. You know what? I also saw that where the NAACP wanted to sandblast Stone Mountain there in Atlanta, Georgia, where it has the generals of the Confederate Army on there. They want to sandblast that off, and they want to tear down. They want to tear down some of the statues of Robert E. Lee and all of this. And I was thinking the other day when I was reading this, we don't have to wait for ISIS to get over here. We got ISIS at work over here wanting to tear down all of the historical monuments that we have in this land. Yeah. But anyway, I also read that a professor, an archaeologist in Palmyra, the city I was talking about here a week or so ago, who was an archaeologist who was trying to hide artifacts from ISIS over there, that they took him into the Colosseum there at the ruins there of Palmyra and beheaded him because he was hiding historical artifacts there, and they're destroying some of the things that have been there since the days of Solomon, you know, over there. And what it proves for them, I don't know, you know, or what it proves in this country for us to sandblast a mountain with a monument on it, or tear something down that's a monument to something or some event in history. I don't know where the profit of that is, you know. There seems to me to be a dumb spirit that's just flowing all over this world, you know, and things happen. Okay. Yes, sir.
What do you think by destroying those things they can erase history? You cannot erase history. It's going to be there no matter what you do.
Right.
That's their soul. They just like the Stone Mountain, moving the statues and everything. They think that's going to change it. It will not change.
So it's not going to change history.
All it is.
It maybe change people knowing about history because they're taking some of it out of the history book. They're taking God out of the history book. Yeah, I mean, that's a fact. I mean, so I saw a little deal the other day said people offended at me using the word Jesus. Then he said, Jesus, 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 Jesus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of the way I feel. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I'm still for Jesus, okay? God bless you this morning.
Flap over the sign.